Frieren isn't the most interesting member of her party. She isn't even the most interesting mage in her party. No, that honor belongs to this judgmental, purple, crack-shot sniper over here, Fern.
Fern should have been the main character in Frieren. Beyond Journey's End is framed as Frieren's story, a reflection on time, memory, and loss through the eyes of an immortal elf. And while that concept is interesting, the more the series unfolds, the clearer one thing becomes. Fern feels like the actual protagonist. In fact, Frieren may have made a crucial mistake by not centering the story around her. Because when you look at who actually grows, reacts, struggles, and changes in real time, it's not Frieren, it's Fern. Let's get into the video.
She's the deuterologist of Frieren, kind of. She's someone who has shown the most growth during the current day of the series, and she's the thematic counterpoint to Frieren. This relationship, this contrast, is part of what makes this series a masterpiece. Fern, the butterfly. Fern has got a lot of flaws, and frankly it's an area where I see a lot of people misunderstand her. There's some viewers who have decided she's this monster in her personal relationships, or anything other than a flawed but quite real young person. She's a prodigy, a stoic. Part of the problem with Fern is that she can't let anyone get close. But she's also why this show is interesting. It's not just Frieren. Fern is part of the reason Frieren Beyond Journey's End is a masterpiece. It's quite common that when a protagonist is an unrelatable figure, someone that's been around so much longer than a normal human, or has a particularly difficult viewpoint for the audience, to have a normal secondary protagonist who can see the world.
Frieren begins the story emotionally distant, powerful, and largely complete as a character. Her arc is about gradual realization, understanding emotions she already should have understood centuries ago. That's not inherently bad, but it creates a passive journey.
Through the eyes of the audience surrogate, with Frieren's point of view being a little unknowable. That would be Fern, and it briefly is. Early on we get to see Fern learning about how Frieren views the passage of time over the years, you know? But then that's about it. Fern isn't massively an audience surrogate character. By the time we catch back up with her at her current age, she spent so long with the elf that that's all normal to her now. But her contrast to Frieren is very important for exploring the themes of the series. Without Fern, you really don't have a show. But a lot of the depth is a little unsaid, since Fern tries to stay a closed book emotionally. Both use magic for connection, both have trouble expressing themselves, both have trouble processing some emotions. But one is an elf who takes hundreds of years to grow, and the other is kind of a prodigy who is catching up with her in just a few decades. A core theme in this series is connection, and Fern factors quite a bit into this, not just by being the right kind of mothering to help Frieren on her journey to understand people, but she's a different maladaptive form of coping. There are different ways of forming connections and relating to others. Frieren has one flawed way. Fern's method has just as many problems. Maybe it's not quite break down crying at the funeral 50 years later level of bad, but it isn't great. It's so bad that sometimes priests have to step in and do her talking for her. Fern has had exceptionally little interaction with anyone her own age, up until she meets this guy, and her entire lifestyle of being dragged along by an elf is basically only happening because she feels guilty about being alive. Frieren doesn't understand emotions and doesn't notice her own. Fern definitely feels hers, she just doesn't know how to express them properly. They have different problems, which thematically bring each other's flaws into focus. Fern's closed off, unapproachable
Frieren reflects more than she acts. She observes more than she confronts. Fern, on the other hand, is actively becoming someone. From the moment Fern enters the story, she's defined by pressure. She carries responsibility, grief, expectations, and insecurity. She's not just reacting to the world, she's trying to survive it. Every decision matters to her. Every mistake costs something. That alone gives her narrative weight. A main character thrives on immediacy. Fern lives in the present. Frieren lives in hindsight. Fern experiences loss while it's still fresh. She struggles with discipline, emotional expression, and self-worth in ways that are visible and ongoing. Her growth isn't implied. It's shown. She changes on screen. Her confidence builds. Her worldview shifts. Her relationships evolve through friction, not silence. That's protagonist energy. Frieren's emotional journey is intentionally slow, but slowness isn't the same as depth. Fern's arc has momentum. She's shaped by her mentor, but she's not defined by her. She pushes back. She questions. She grows beyond expectations placed on her. Frieren rarely feels challenged by anything external. Fern constantly is. Even in combat, the difference is obvious. Frieren's power makes fights feel predetermined. Fern's fights feel tense because she can fail. Stakes exist when Fern is involved. Victory isn't guaranteed. Fear is present. Growth is earned. That's not accidental. It's storytelling instinct. Fern also functions as the emotional bridge for the audience. She reacts the way viewers would. She questions Frieren's detachment. She shows frustration, concern, and attachment when Frieren doesn't. In many scenes, Fern is the emotional anchor, while Frieren is the observer. When a supporting character consistently carries emotional grounding, it raises an important question. Why aren't we following them instead? The story often uses Fern as the lens through which Frieren is understood. That's backwards. Main characters usually illuminate the world, not rely on others to humanize them. Fern humanizes Frieren. That dynamic works, but it unintentionally shifts narrative gravity. Fern becomes the emotional core. Frieren becomes the concept. And concepts rarely outperform characters when it comes to engagement. Another critical point is relatability. Frieren's immortality creates distance. Fern's mortality creates urgency. Viewers connect more easily to someone who fears time, loss, and failure because those fears are immediate. Fern doesn't have centuries to process regret. She has now. That makes her story hit harder. This isn't about replacing Frieren entirely. Frieren works extremely well as a mentor figure. A guide, a presence, a symbol of time itself. But symbols don't always make the strongest protagonists. Characters do. Fern is the character who lives with consequences. If Frieren were framed as Fern's mentor rather than the primary focus, the story would gain momentum without losing its themes. Reflection would still exist, but it would be balanced with progression. Silence would be paired with struggle. Atmosphere would meet urgency. Instead, Frieren remains the center, and Fern orbits her, despite often feeling like the one actually moving forward. That's the core issue. Frieren is static by design. Fern is dynamic by nature. And dynamic characters almost always make better main characters. Calling Fern a side character undersells her role. She's the one growing into the future while Frieren looks backward. She represents change, responsibility, and emotional presence. Frieren represents memory. Both are valuable. But only one drives a story forward. That's why the argument exists. That's why this debate won't disappear. And that's why so many viewers quietly feel more invested when Fern is on screen. Because deep down, it feels like we're watching Fern's journey, through Frieren's shadow. And maybe that's exactly why Fern should have been the main character all along.